There are moments in a story where everything changes, all at once with a single event, resulting in a great loss. In the last 9 parts of the series, we've been building the timeline surrounding Candace Owens, her rise, and the institutions and media ecosystems around her, the conflicts, the narratives, and the increasingly public fractures that followed her career from platform to platform. But in this part of the story, the tone shifts once again, because this chapter centers around absence and how she reacted to this loss. In this episode, we're going to look at the period after Charlie Kirk's death and the public reaction surrounding Candace Owens' attacks on the people and organizations connected to him, and the growing concern from commentators who began openly questioning where this path was leading. We'll examine the rhetoric, the escalation, and the way conspiracy, grievance, and personal conflict began to consume the narrative itself. Because by this point in the timeline, something else becomes impossible to ignore. Not just what was being said, but what may have been lost along the way. This is part 10. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I hope everyone is doing well. Okay, so episode 10. Episode 10. Can you believe it? Crazy. So I want everyone to let me know if they like this lighting compared to the other videos. I have it more on, there's a setting of in between warm and cool, and I put it on that. The only thing I don't like about it, I think, is that my teeth look yellow under these lights. Or more yellow, I guess I would say. I remember when my friend was who told me I should make a YouTube channel, shout out to her if she's watching. She said I should make a YouTube channel, and then I said, I don't have like super white teeth. And she was like, what does that have to do with anything? And I'm like, everybody on YouTube has insanely white teeth. Have you guys ever noticed this? I was like, I think it's a rule. I think you have to have like extremely white teeth. What are these people doing? Does anyone know? Are they all aliens looking at you, Edie Marie? Okay, so let's get into it, shall we? This is going to be a hard episode. I really hope that I can get through it. But let's do this, shall we? Okay, so I remember where I was when I found out about Charlie Kirk. I was outside on my porch in my chair scrolling on X, just scrolling, and I saw the video that popped up right when it happened, basically, and that's how I found out. And so a lot of people, they don't see the whole video anymore. The video got taken down eventually, and now we see when people are examining the video or talking about the situation, we only see the frames up to the point where there's frames afterwards, right? Where immense amounts of blood come out. And so lots of people don't see that, but I did. And so I was not well for a while after the whole Charlie Kirk thing. And like my brain didn't work. I was in like a complete fog and just crying randomly. I would be, boiling water and just immediately just start breaking down, crying. My daughter, like, she was like, "What's going on? What's wrong?" Because I never cry. Like, I'm not a crier, you know? I'm not like a super emotional person normally, you know? And I tried to explain to my daughter has no idea who Charlie Kirk is, which was, fine, but she had no idea why I was so upset. And I couldn't really explain it very well to her, you know? I remember thinking I should have maybe, like later on, I remember thinking I should have tried to explain it better, but I literally couldn't think at all for weeks. I feel like weeks. And I was hopping around, going to place of people who were talking about Charlie Kirk, people who knew him, people who got the news. That was like my solace, was hearing other people who knew Charlie Kirk, being in their emotions, expressing how they felt and stuff. So, anyway, this episode is going to be about Charlie Kirk and what Candace did in those days. Okay, so we're going to start with the house. We're going to start with the House and Habit article. Okay, so we are on part 4 of the Candace Owens series Undone with Jessica Strauss with House and Habit. This is her outfit on Substack. And of course, the link will be in the description. I link every single thing that I use, whether it's even just a small short or whatever, I link it in the description box. Try to get through this. Part 4, Candace Owens Undone, Our Friend Charlie. Parties implicated by her probe include but are not limited to the governments of Israel, Egypt, France, and the United States, various Jewish individuals, Turning Point USA, and Erica Kirk. All I remember about that day is that it was gray outside in Washington. It was sunny. It was sunny where I was. Sunny and hot. It was bright. Very bright. And it was gray inside my hotel room when the news arrived from an unfamiliar number. Charlie has been shot. The person behind the number I didn't recognize told me that they had a child in the crowd at the university in Utah where Charlie had arrived to address students that afternoon. Their child had seen it or heard it or knew enough to be certain that it had happened. I rushed to the council I stayed in close touch with throughout the day, 4 women who care about politics as intensely as they care about anything, united in a group chat with a funny name where just hours earlier I'd asked whether we were meeting for lunch downtown. My fingers shook as I typed the words still forming syntax inside my rattled headspace. Charlie Kirk shot? Question mark, question mark. I beg your pardon? Shot in the head, I'm hearing? I'm sorry, are you joking? Oh my God. Was he shot or was there just shots? I'm shaking. People on X say they saw it. I'm scared. Can we make sure this is real? He is my friend. Oh God, it's so bad. I'm literally sobbing. This is horrible. Oh my God, where was he shot? What part of his body? People are running is all I'm seeing. I refreshed the news feed over and over. I'm sick. Please, no, before clicking, this shows it. I don't know if I can watch it. Let me wait. I feel sick. I can't stop crying. I can't drive. Words and text were easy to stretch into doubt, but the scene on the video quickly proved inescapable. Charlie, beneath a shaded tent in a white shirt, collapsing after a single shot pierced his neck, blood pouring like a river out of him. The audience of 3,000 students, now 3 witnesses. It was the president's eldest son who called to inform him. After the call, according to a source, the president sat still and silent in the room while the room around him dissolved into shapeless horror. When the vice president arrived, the door to the Oval Office closed. You could hear a pin drop, the source said. Fragmented updates pinged through multiple group chats, webbed by some connection to Charlie. As the news spread, the pace of prayer grew frantic, all of us clinging to the improbable idea that he might somehow survive. When I saw that video, I knew instantly that he was gone instantly. And I even texted my husband and said that he was, gone. I said Charlie Kirk is dead. So, yeah. We prayed for reason to doubt any news that threatened it. We prayed on the credibility of every incremental rumor that fed our hope. We prayed for reason to doubt any news that threatened it. Then it was lost. I heard it's over. One of the women texted a friend of hers had received a call from the FBI. Shortly after, the president would be the one called upon to confirm it. The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead, he posted. Yeah, there were people who didn't want to be the first news organization to report it. So people had known that it was, but they just didn't want to hit send on that. I remember hearing people say that. In the days that followed, I joined those who sought to honor Charlie as he deserved. We set aside grievances. We checked on one another. We talked about we. And we acknowledged how radical it still is to possess our freedoms of expression and to uphold them by expressing our ideas, knowing that expression carries risk. It was no longer possible to ignore those risks because it was impossible to ignore that Charlie was no longer here. I remember texting people. Like, I don't even know what I was doing. Like, I was texting random people in my phone, just people like that I kind of know, not even really well. I texted, I think the guy who brokered my, mortgage, my mortgage broker, my mortgage broker, I texted him and asked him if he was okay. So I do remember doing that. I don't remember like a lot from that time period because I was so confused and dazed. It was the right thing to do, to think bigger than fleeting frictions, to contribute to his legacy by rising to the standard he set for civility. I let go of lingering resentments, even those I could rationalize. After months of pent-up anger, the knot coiled deep inside me softened enough to reconsider Candace Owens. Grief seemed to humanize her. Tears in her eyes, she succumbed to nostalgia. She shared old videos and text exchanges that revealed the depth of affection she and Charlie shared, two college dropouts fused in friendship by shared ambition and steady resolve. Candace, in this light, was no longer just someone who lived inside a screen to torment people like me. She was someone's friend. She was someone who had lost her friend. Now, I told you guys when I first started this series that I stopped watching Candace Owens or liking her or anything when I saw what she did to one of Andrew Tate's victims. And I too, like Jessica Reed Krause, felt a moment of let's just forgive people. She lost her friend. At the time, I didn't realize that they weren't friends anymore because I didn't really pay attention to that, I guess. But like we know now, they weren't really friends at all for a really long time. So it's weird. There was like a weird illusion, I think, put over it all. And I don't know why. I wish they would have been, I think being more direct about them not being friends might have been a good thing to have had happen. So I too went and watched Candace Owens' show that she put out in the moments. I think it was like that night even. Let's go look at that, shall we?
That has never happened before. I guess we could say Charlie broke the internet one more time. 150,000 of you guys were watching, and the system just sort of crashed. And
now, I don't know if that's even true. I never saw that. I wasn't watching it live, but I do remember watching this and thinking it was kind of weird. But I don't know.
It just really makes me happy that happened, actually. It was already very difficult for me to do this for a lot of reasons, but I knew it was important because I didn't want the last thing that people had in their minds about Charlie to be the moment he lost his life. That was what was especially hard because he's just had so many amazing moments throughout his career. And as I was saying, I was having this discussion with George this morning, obviously through a lot of tears, about not wanting Charlie's caricature to survive when the actual Charlie Kirk individual, who Charlie Kirk actually is so much more important. The caricature, the cartoon, is that Charlie's this young, smart guy, made a career out of debating college kids, decided not to go to college, started Turning Point USA. And I think a lot of people thought.
So I haven't watched this since I first did. This is going to be really weird because then I wasn't paying attention because I literally had no idea that everyone was going to go nuts and become crazy people. Like we've watched so many people do, just one by one falling off the bandwagon of sanity into complete nutso world. So I find this interesting, what she just said. I'm going to rewind it.
Well, that has never happened before. I guess we could say Charlie broke the internet one more time. 150,000 of you guys were watching, and the system just sort of crashed. And it just really makes me happy that happened, actually. It was already very difficult for me to do this for a lot of reasons, but I knew it was important because I didn't want the last thing that people had in their minds about Charlie to be the moment he lost his life. That was what was especially hard.
Why would that be the last thing we had in our minds? That's not the last thing I had in my mind. I was thinking about how much I cared about Charlie. But you know what I have in my mind now? Whenever I think about Charlie, I have all the stuff that Candace Owens has done. All the vile, nasty attacks, ridiculous, vile, I can't even put into word, all this, the nastiness, the attacking, the smear campaigning, the lies, the attacking Charlie's friends and company and his very person by trying to rewrite his entire history. That's all I have in my head whenever I try to think about Charlie Kirk now, because of what this woman has done. So I think it's really interesting that she said the last thing, that she didn't want the last thing that we would have in our minds, Charlie Kirk dying. No, instead she wanted the last things to be in our minds when we think about Charlie Kirk is her and all of her nonsense.
Hard because he's just had so many amazing moments throughout his career. And as I was saying, I was having this discussion with George this morning, obviously through a lot of tears, about not wanting Charlie's caricature to survive when the actual Charlie Kirk individual, who Charlie Kirk actually is so much more important. The caricature, the cartoon, is that Charlie's this young, smart guy, made a.
Okay, so everything she's about to spout off here is not the caricature. That's actually Charlie. He was young, smart guy who built a company that did amazing things. She's repeating things that he actually is. That's not a caricature.
Career out of debating college kids, decided not to go to college, started Turning Point USA. And I think a lot of people thought that Charlie must take himself a bit too seriously. And I want you guys to know that that could not be further from the truth. Charlie and me were always...
Nobody thought that. Literally, nobody thought that, Candace.
Laughing. Yes, he was ambitious. Everybody knows Charlie's ambitious. I met him back in 2017 when Turning Point was this very young organization. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew who Charlie Kirk was. And Charlie was always wearing these really baggy suits. I mean, they looked like they were hand-me-downs from 3 generations because he was focused on the ideas. He didn't care about his appearance. He was laser focused on what he knew Turning Point could become. Not could become, but would become. He hired me on the spot. We were at this conference in Florida. And he and I used to always say, we never said the rest was history. You know, the rest is history. We say the rest is future. We were totally locked in. And I want you guys to know about our first planning sesh. Okay. It was in the middle of Chicago O'Hare Airport. There is this restaurant that's called the Macaroni Grill. And I sat down with Charlie on our first trip together. He flips over this little paper menu as we're waiting for our flight. And he takes out this pen and he just starts drawing a map of what he wants to happen into the future, what the Turning Point organization will become. It was spastic. It was unhinged. It was the absolute best. It was true Charlie. He was a visionary. Charlie was a visionary. If he could envision it, it was going to happen. He knew that. I knew that. And what he had envisioned was for Turning Point USA to become the biggest conservative student organization, not just in the nation, by the way, but in the world. He kind of squabbled and swiveled and wrote that the structure is currently a 501c3, and he's sitting there talking to me, but here's what we can do in the future, and here's how, and then I'm going to probably take control of the RNC. I mean, he's 23 years old, right? And he's speaking to me about how he's going to take over the RNC. The person that he adored the most, like really, and never in a million years did he think that he was going to meet him, and of course he did, was Rush Limbaugh. He was really raised on Rush Limbaugh, listening to Rush Limbaugh day in and day out. And he told me through many conversations that if he could have a show like Rush Limbaugh one day, he would be very happy. That was, I think, his ultimate goal, and it happened. We had a bunch of rules. Charlie's rule was never say no to Fox News. So even if the show was at 4 a.m. in the morning, crack of dawn, I cannot tell you guys how many hits we did on Fox News. I'm talking 4 hits a day, up at 4 a.m. for Fox and Friends first, and then doing whatever the evening program was because he believed this is the way that we're going to get our names out there. You know, we have to work harder. My rule was I was like, we shouldn't drink. Everybody in politics is drinking. They're drunk all the time. If we're passionate, we have to understand that it's a disadvantage. People are always made weaker. It doesn't make anybody stronger to be drunk after an event. And so we didn't drink. And we had a motto, a couple of mottos, but Charlie's was, we can always outwork our opponents. I can't tell you how many times we looked at each other and we said, we can outwork them. Everyone was bigger than us, but not working harder than us. That came really directly from Charlie. It was the thing that he said we could always control. And I totally agreed with that. Work ethic meant everything. I think it's very obvious to everyone. I was the culture. Charlie was the politics. Charlie needed a little bit more culture. I needed to learn the rules of politics. I mean, he could tell you every office in the White House and what this person does, things I'd never even heard before. I was just passionate about Black Lives Matter. I knew it was going to be harmful for Black Americans, and I wanted to share that message. And Charlie showed me how to do that in the best way possible. I learned very quickly with Charlie that politics breeds unnecessary enemies. It is incredibly it's disheartening industry. You know, you're lucky if you have one friend. You're lucky if you have 2 friends. There are so many people that will test your character along the way. Like I said, I was a nobody. It was funny going through text messages yesterday, and I'm like, Charlie, my goal is to have 50,000 followers on Instagram. I think we can do it by the end of the year. And after he hired me, he had been working already really hard on doing this campus tour throughout California. He called it the Big 3, UCLA, we're going to do Stanford, we're going to do Berkeley. And there was somebody who was a lot bigger than me at the time who was going to be kind of the face of it. Because like I said, people were not going to buy tickets to hear me and Charlie Kirk speak. And he had someone that they definitely would hear speak. And for whatever reason, and this was just my luck, Charlie was pumping gas. He was inside of the gas station, and I'm sitting in the car, and I see this person, his phone is sitting in the car, and the messages are lighting up on the screen, and this individual saying, I don't want to do this event with that new girl.
I literally have no memory of any of this. I know I watched this. This is the one, right? Or did that go away? Did she delete that and put up a different one? I'm so confused now. I feel like I remember her saying the one that I watched that it was down, that it went away. So now I'm like really confused.
I don't want to do this event with that new girl you hired. Like, I don't want to share the stage with her, essentially. Just mean-spirited, no reason. I'm bigger than her. I should do this by myself. And then if she wants to come on.
Why are you bringing this up? Like, do you see what I'm saying? This, I had to rewind it, but this is weird. This is a memorial show for Charlie, and you're bringing up some nasty, like, stupid thing that doesn't mean anything. in the long run of where she is now and everything, she's bringing up this moment.
And being auxiliary, that's fine. But I don't want to share the stage with her, this newbie. I remember Charlie gets in the car and he looks at the message and he looks at me and he knows I've looked at the message. I saw it. And I'm like, Charlie, I said, I have no idea like where this is going. Obviously, I understand that the sensible you doesn't want to lose this person on the ticket, that this means a lot to you and you've worked hard on it. But you're going to have to learn that you have to make the right decision and not the easy decision. And this is only going to work if we keep making the right decisions, you know? And I could just see the struggle within him. And then he did the right thing. He said, okay, if you don't want to do this event with this newbie Candace, then we're not going to do the event. And Candace and I will do it alone. And we did. We went at it alone. Actually, I think for that particular event, Dave Rubin hopped on and the rest was future. For 2 years straight, Charlie and I flew around the world together on very little sleep. We were always exhausted. I'm not kidding. We took hundreds of flights together. We slept in the crappiest hotel rooms. I mean, walls so paper thin. You just hear everything. And when you're in that capacity with someone 2 years straight, just traveling nonstop, you really get to know them. You really.
Was it 2 years straight? Was it actually? Let's make sure that that's even correct. Okay, so how many years precisely did Candace work for Turning Point? Approximately 1 year and 5 to 6 months, from late November 2017 to early May 2019. On November 21st, 2017, so basically at the end of the year, Turning Point founder Charlie Kirk announced Candace's departure. She announced her resignation on May 1st, 2019. That roughly spans 1 year, 5 months, and 10 days. Okay, so not even 2 years. I said, were they traveling together constantly during that entire time? No, not constantly, every day for the full 17 months. They traveled together frequently, especially during major speaking tours in 2018 and early 2019. Campus Clash Tour. Main joint activities started around fall 2018. They co-headlined a multi-stop national campus speaking tour for Turning Point USA. It included stops at places like University of Washington, Cornell, Montana State, Liberty University, and others throughout late 2018 into 2019. Reports describe them crisscrossing the country for these events over roughly the last 1 to 2 years of her tenure. They appeared together at many campus events, rallies, and tpusa functions. University of Hawaii, May 18th, California campuses, etc. Contemporaneous accounts and later recollections note they traveled together a lot in the early years of her role, building a close working relationship. Not 24/7 or the entire period. Her tenure ran from 2017 in November to May 2019. The heavy joint touring seems to be concentrated in 2018, early 2019. There's no evidence of nonstop daily travel. Like most roles, this likely included office work, individual appearances, media planning, and downtime. tpusa is headquartered in Arizona, and events were episodic rather than perpetual road life. Shocking. Of course, she's over-embellishing. Why would she not, right?
You see them in every condition. You start bickering like an old married couple. Charlie, this is not how you pack a suitcase, I say to him. Charlie, you can't just like put your dirty running shoes on top of your clean shirts, okay? You just can't do that. Charlie, you need to eat something, okay? You're running on fumes, you got to eat something. Okay, this is not a full meal. Back, forth. Charlie, you got to buy yourself some suits that fit. That conversation, I was like, Charlie, okay, I get it. You're like boy wonder. You got to buy some suits that fit. I wasn't the only one that was hammering him on that. It was also Don Jr. And eventually him, and I think it was actually him and Eric. They're like, Charlie, I know you're very frugal. We know that you're very aware that your salary comes from donors. He always wanted to be a really good steward of their capital. But eventually Don and Eric got him a gift certificate, I think it was for his birthday, to a fancy suit place to go get fitted. And the rest is future, right? It is so important for me to make sure that you guys understand how absolutely hilarious Charlie was. Charlie was hilarious, okay? He did not take himself too seriously. He was so good at doing imitations and accents. Anyway, any imitation, any accent, he was just on the money. And all we did was laugh. It's all you can do and laugh. People were just so crazy all the time. When I was reading through the chat today, I was just laughing with just tears in my eyes, thinking of the many road trips that we took, so many hours spent just talking trash to one another, making fun of one another. One of the best moments that I can think of, and there's so many to choose from, was we were driving through Colorado, and I put on a Kanye song, on my playlist, and Charlie goes, "Is this Jay-Z?"
Bringing up Kanye. And as if Charlie didn't know who he was. I mean, I don't, looking back, I believe nothing she says now. Like, you know what I mean?
I almost made him pull over the vehicle. I was like, "Are you kidding me? I understand that you don't do culture, but like, come on. You don't know the difference between Jay-Z and Kanye." And he didn't. And I explained to him the difference. I was like, "Okay, no, you got to."
Okay, like Charlie was younger than me, right? And I listened to Jay-Z when I was young, when I was little. He's on the radio. I mean, people, you know who Jay-Z is, right? I don't know, man.
Got to get into some Kanye West music. Next thing you know, Charlie's really getting into some Kanye West music. He's running 10 miles a day. He got really into running. And he's texting me about how great it is. Like there's this text, Charlie. He's like, "Yes, it's my new favorite song." And he just loved it. Kanye's Power kind of became our theme song for the tour. I have no idea why, but that was our hype song before we went on stage.
Also, like, I think it's weird that she's sharing their private text messages. I don't think I would do that. And I don't think many people were. I mean, people have had to because of what has happened since. But it's just kind of odd to share someone who just died, your really good friend, supposedly, their text messages with you. I mean, that's to your entire audience of millions of people. It's just kind of weird,
So you can only imagine when just a couple of months later, we've been listening to Kanye's old albums on repeat. Suddenly Kanye West tweets, "I love the way Candace Owens thinks." The excitement. Okay, we were certain that we had manifested it. We were 100%, we manifested this by listening to Power on repeat. Actually, I found a clip of us backstage on that day when that tweet happened, and we were doing what I used to refer to as like the Charlie dance. Here it is. You don't understand like the divinity of him reading that? Like, I'm living in that Charlie dance. There's something meaning to it. The era of Kanye. I can't even explain it because you really did have to be there. Charlie was my overly bright and sometimes really annoying kid brother. I was smiling going through my chat of how many times he would text me a picture and say, "Does this look cool? Does this look cool? Do I look cool?" This is like just a screen recording of us talking about a pair of sunglasses. He's just sending me it. I'm like, "Nah, that's not good. Nope, that's not. No, send. Okay, that one's okay. That'll work." And this is actually one of my favorite photos of him where he said, I can just hear him when I look at this photo. I can hear him saying, "Does this look cool?" He was wearing a pair of Yeezys that Kanye gave him, and he looked really cool. I thought they really suited him. I was like, "Yeah, you look really cool, Charlie." The reverse of that obviously was him constantly hammering me on debates. I mean, Charlie was like, "Look, you gotta know the arguments of your opponents backward and forward." I remember I had
whatever training Charlie tried to instill in her in debates did not take. Okay, because she could not form an argument properly to get herself out of a paper bag. Okay, that's how bad she is with that.
Note cards like I was in high school, just memorizing every statistic and being strengthened by, just day in and day out. He was just pretending to be a protester, pretending to be a radical. And he used to always say, "Iron sharpens iron." And we spent so much time practicing debating and really thinking through what our ideas were. Charlie never missed a meeting that he had. He wouldn't do that. He took that very seriously. It doesn't matter what the circumstance was, even if it was a hurricane. And one day there was literally a hurricane. I think we were in North Carolina, South Carolina, I don't remember, but all the flights got canceled and we needed to be in DC by morning. And Charlie looks at me, he's like, "We got to rent a car. We got to drive 8 hours." Totally insane. And one of the most fun road trips I've had in my life. Every single song was sung. Me and Charlie were always singing in cars. To show you, this is from that road trip. And then, of course, there was always some hip hop mixed in. Ignition, remix. Like murder, she rolled. Once I get you out the clothes, privacy. You look cool, Charlie. You look cool. We really did go everywhere. I mean, all 50 states, Canada, down to the border, the United Kingdom, Israel, you name it, we were there. And there was always a new T-shirt to print out. "Justice for Brett Kavanaugh." sends to me, how's this one? I love it. We just loved the t-shirts. That was the thing. The him too one, that was controversial. That was a controversial moment. One of those character forming moments. I won't forget it because that Me Too hashtag, it just started going viral and people were emotional. And right away I was like, Me Too is awful. This is terrible for women. It's terrible for men. You know, just me being Candace saying the thing, and left and right, people were hammering me. It was like, how dare you say that we need due process? We're talking about rape. And I remember he had young women at Turning Point who were threatening to quit, crying in the office. How could she not support Me Too? Young women who did quit. And then we had at the same time the YWLS conference. So the reporters who already hated us just completely, they just swooped in there and they were like, oh, do you support her statements? And I just remember just being behind Charlie and Andrew Colvett, and he just held the line. He held the line because he agreed with me and he knew it was going to be a bit of fire. People, you've got to fire her. How could she say this? And he didn't. He held the line. And yeah, it was one of those moments where Charlie, he had good character. But the prep for every one of those events, like even the Him Too event, it was always Kanye. Here it is.
Creativity, purity, and honesty is honestly being carried by these wrong laws. Reality is catching up with me. It's my inner child fighting for custody.
Just literally me, Charlie, and Sarah, who was his assistant at the time, just playing the hype music. Charlie and I fought a lot of battles together. I mean, of course, who could forget the infamous day that we got chased out of a Philadelphia restaurant by Antifa, and they threw water and they threw an egg on Charlie. We were just amazed at how quickly they had assembled once they found out what restaurant we were at. But I want you to watch him here. Like, even in this moment of shock and adversity, he finds a reason to smile, and it's incredible. Take a look at this.
So I remember this vividly. Remember they put pictures of this with them covered, like her and Charlie covered in stuff, and they put the messaging around it was like Jim Crow era. Like there, I remember they would put picture next of this, of them, and then a picture next to it of the students being put into the schools. The try to whatever. I can't remember what it's called. It's always so late and my brain never works. What was it called? Integration and people were like losing their minds and like crazy things like this were happening. But I don't know. It's kind of weird to think about now.
That was Charlie. That was Charlie, man. That was always his main thing. Be a happy warrior. And he was a happy warrior. And we were happy warriors. And we laughed a lot at.
So when was this? So this was September 11th. So this was the very next day. She doesn't even look upset like one bit. She's like laughing. She's not stumbling like, to catch her breath or anything, looking at these pictures. I'm just thinking about it now. Like she doesn't seem torn up at all. This is weird, actually, now that I think about it. Because I have a hard time talking about Charlie now. So this was literally the next day. She's talking in a way like he's been gone for months or something. And she's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just weird.
The protesters, the absurdity of the protesters always. I personally think some of the protesters liked that Charlie and I were making light fun of them. I don't even know what campus event this is, but I love this video of me just playing with the protesters, sitting in front of one of their signs and Charlie speaking over my shoulder. Take a listen.
If you aren't wealthy, white, and male, Charlie Kirk is not your friend. What do you think?
Not my friend anymore?
Are we not friends? Is
This
that right?
Find out. This is how I'm going to find out. A sign outside of a thing, an event that we just did, and you're not my friend.
Go figure.
Looking back at too many photos, I just have too many photos with Charlie. It really is incredible to see how many times he's just right behind my back. Charlie always had my back, and I always had his. Charlie was right by my side when I started Blexit, obviously. He was also there the night that I met my husband, which was absolutely an incredible night. And in the UK, which I didn't expect to happen. And I got to tell you, initially, Charlie, ever the analytical mind, what I told him, I'm like, I think I'm going to marry this guy. First, he's like, wait, like, is this going to be good for your brand? like, Charlie, this is love. This is not a brand decision. And then he sat down and he spent just one evening with George, and Charlie was just the most supportive.
Okay, so that's interesting because I remember in the future her bringing up that people with Turning Point or people, yeah, I think it was like Turning Point. She was like, the donors were saying that it would be bad for my brand not to marry a guy from like a black man from the ghetto, right? Do you remember her saying that? But here she's saying that Charlie said that and she's fine with it. She's like, ah. But then later in the future, she makes a big deal about it. I remember that.
Of everything. And this is our text chain speaking about that moment. He's like, his heart is wonderful. You guys are meant for each other. I see it brilliantly and clearly. And he gets it. He isn't afraid of you being you. And he's been through hell. And it was, Charlie was by my side the day that I got married. Of course, he was by my side, when I got married to George. Then, of course, Charlie fell in love with Erica. That entire journey to me when I was reading through the text is so funny because it was exceptional. I was always leaning into Charlie's analytical mind and making fun of him. Like, oh, well, all we need to do is get a plan. You love Erica? Okay, what's the plan? What are we going to do? What's step 1? What's step 2? And the plan that I came up with instantly was all we have to do is convince her that her last name is terrible. Her last name, she's got to marry you because it's practical. Mrs. Erica Kirk sounds so much better than Miss Erica Francie. What is that last name? It's a practical decision. This is the text chain from that. Charlie and Erica Kirk. He says it's going to be the power couple of a century. I need to continue to pray about it. I said, her last name's dumb. She literally needs you to propose. It's way too complicated. He said, I'm going to tell her it sounds like a sneeze. It's horrible. And then I wrote, marry me. It's a logistics thing. That's just who we were. Always making fun and always wanting to know what the plan was. And obviously it worked, you guys. It worked. Our plan worked. We broke Erica down. First came the name shame, then came the wedding, and then came the children. Charlie really loved Erica from the time I'm reading through the text today. Just loved her. He loved his family. He really did. And I just want to say that Charlie and I, because I think this is important, never for a single minute, ever, did Charlie and I stop being friends. Even when the world demanded that from both of us, our relationship was...
Okay, so she had to put that in there that, we've never stopped being friends. We never, ever. I just want to put it out there. I just want to say that we never stopped being friends. Okay. Like...
was real. We were brother and sister. We were fortified. Our relationship was forged in fire, the fire of politics. I knew him. I knew Charlie, the real Charlie. And Charlie knew the real Candace, and people knew I didn't like a lot of people in politics. I didn't like a lot of people calling me and doing the political dance. Of course, people guessed it correctly when they said, the person who probably was the intermediary when Trump called about Brigitte was Charlie Kirk. Of course it was Charlie. They would never send anybody else to call me with anything because they knew that Charlie was a brother to me. And there was so many things that were said that were wrong. And we laughed at how wrong it was when people thought that when I had made up my mind about Israel, that Charlie and me fell apart. Nope, never, not for a second. I said, it's the easiest decision ever because Charlie knew who I was and I knew who he was. I said, Charlie, this is where I'm at and there's no room for movement. And you tell your whoever that needs to hear it, whatever you need to tell them, because
it's interesting to hear the way she was talking about Erica Kirk knowing what was to come, right? I mean, it's so crazy.
We're always going to be brothers and sisters, We're always going to be brother and sister. And we would talk about things and debate things behind the scenes. And I think my perspective was as it's been throughout our relationship. You might not get it now, Charlie, but you will. I'm only a few years older than you, but I think you're gonna see things my way. And I think...
Okay, so this is September 11th, and she's already setting up that you're going to see it my way, Charlie, on Israel. Then she starts saying he was starting to change his mind on Israel. She's already working in her brain how she's going to set everything up.
I think in the end, Charlie was going through a spiritual transformation. I don't think it. I know it. He was going through a lot.
And there's when she starts to say he wasn't actually Protestant, that he was actually Catholic, remember? This was September 11th.
And there was a lot of pressure, and it's hard for me to watch the people who were pressuring him, I don't know, just say the things that they're saying. There's something about it that just feels really fake to me. And
already
they would have allowed him to lose and wanted him to lose everything for changing or even slightly modifying an opinion, and then to see them doing what they're doing today, it's hurtful to me. It's very hurtful to me. But I don't want today to be about anything other than you guys knowing that Charlie really was an amazing person. He was like, we were really close. And he was He was my best friend and my brother. And I will never unsee the footage of what I saw, the violence of it. I pray for the people who took any pleasure in that. There's not a single person in the world that I would wish that on. And least of all, someone with a heart like Charlie's. He loved his family, he loved his wife, he loved his country. And he didn't deserve that ending. He's really young. But I know that we will carry the torch. I will never allow the memory of Charlie to be forgotten, obviously, because there is no Candace without Charlie. We came up in politics together. And so I don't know what else to say, guys, other than I'm in a lot of pain right now. And I love you, Charlie. And, I'll see you when I'll see you. I love you very much. Thank you, guys.
Okay, wow. Wow, you guys. Okay, so I want to show you guys that right here, see this to my friend Charlie Kirk? Right here, the very next episode, they are lying about Charlie Kirk. The very next episode. The very next episode. Now, I remember this time I actually did start watching her, and I think I even stumbled into like Baron Coleman too there in the beginning, and other people that we all know. I keep blanking on all their names, but like I was so out of it. I had no idea what was going on, and I'm predispositioned to conspiracy anyway. So for like a little bit, I was like, oh, maybe, something's going on, but no, but, and then I don't even know, like I was trying to rack my brain today. I was like, when did I like realize that all this was insanity? Because I came to at some point, it wasn't very long. I was listening to everybody, not just only the people. I was listening to everybody, including Gary Melton was a huge rock for me, and with Paramount Tactical. And we were all like thinking about things, questioning like exactly what could have how it happened, what happened, all that. But at some point, I was just like, what are they saying? Wait a minute, what? But I couldn't remember exactly what that point was. I just remember being like, wait a minute, what is this? Okay, back to the article. It was easy to give in to hope, to feel as though the Christ-like qualities possessed by Charlie could animate the right, and maybe the rest of America too. It was especially easy to feel that way on the floor of his memorial in Arizona, where the Amfest pyrotechnics illuminated the leaders of the administration Charlie elected in a collision of megachurch and MAGA rally ecstasies that exercised our collective grief for a few hours. When Trump seemed to tire of the somber subject that led him to Phoenix and pivoted to his usual stream of consciousness, rattling off accomplishments and soon-to-be accomplishments of his White House, it didn't feel like disrespect. It felt like, to me and anyone who knew him, like exactly what Charlie would have wanted. But this renewed faith didn't last long. National sorrow was quickly corrupted by suspicion. It was urged on by the federal government's response to the crime, clumsy to put it charitably, incompetent to put it fairly. Still, even if the government had handled everything perfectly, suspicion would have flourished soon enough. The surge in Bible sales was accompanied by a finger-pointing thy neighbor frenzy that suggested sky-high illiteracy rates when it came to the teachings of Christ. Conspiracies tied to Israel and to the history of Israeli assassins proliferated, which was good news for those in the Israel conspiracy trade. Candace shook off her grief posture to position herself as the rigid lead investigator in the case of Charlie's assassination. The old scenes of friendship were replaced by ready-made memes, mockery, and conjecture. Escalation fed escalation. Crisis fed content. Her tone turned venomous, her stare narrowed, cold, and predatory. On Candace, Charlie's legacy was degraded, deflated, and repackaged as untrue crime that quickly became her most successful programming to date. Okay, so let's see how successful it has been for her to nonstop talk about the Charlie Kirk assassination and the wild theories she's came up with.
Candace began her independent podcast in June of 2024, and it took off fast because she leaned on the same thing that she leaned on since the beginning of her commentary career in 2014, which is celebrity drama. She was able to grow her audience, leveraging her fallout with Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire. She also harkened back to her 2015 days by openly opposing Trump once again. You can see right here that her podcast starts off very strong in terms of subscriber growth. She got 380,000 new subscribers in July of 2024. And each line that you see on that graph right there represents 100,000 new subscribers. So she grew steadily for about 9 months there until April of 2025. By that point, the presidential election was over. She had openly come out against Trump, and her audience growth stalled out completely. In fact, it went well below 1/4 of the growth that she had before. And that is until Charlie Kirk was assassinated. You can see from April all the way to September, it plateaued. And not only did it plateau, it cratered. You can see the second lowest month in her podcast history happened to be the month that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and actually continued to plateau throughout that month, even though she was talking about Charlie Kirk actively. He was assassinated again on September 10th, and she talked about him for 20 days after, and still her channel did not grow. It was one of the worst months for her ever. That is until she switched gears, and you can see this on her channel. Suddenly in October, she decided that she wanted to go on this conspiracy quest. She started asking questions, and she experienced more growth in that month than in the last 6 months combined. You can see it on this graph. This is from Social Blade. This is public information, and I have corroborated this with other sources such as ViewStats. There are a lot of people who track this sort of thing because it is public data. You can see in October, when she started the conspiracy grift, over 800,000 new subscribers came pouring in to see what Candace had on the Charlie Kirk investigation. And this is when Candace realized she had to continue to fabricate evidence in order to keep the grift going. How could you not if you have the ethics that she has? She cratered. You can see it in the graph. And then suddenly out of nowhere, more than 800,000 people in the matter of 1 month. She had, in a matter of weeks, multiplied her earnings by more than 6 times. And you can see after that, the growth slowed. And as people woke up to her grift slowly, she had the lowest month of growth she's ever experienced in the history of her channel, February. Last month, guys, this just barely happened. The grift was over. People were sick of her lies. You could see it all over X. People were calling her out. And she knew it. She knew she was on the fence. She knew the growth was over, but she couldn't give up the grift because she had seen that momentum. She had seen the money pour in. She had gained so much. And so on February 23rd, she announced Bride of Charlie.
And I will add here that this is nothing new for her. This is a pattern of behavior. So if you go back farther in the graphs, like April Chapman did in one of the videos, one of the earlier videos I did, she shows how this will happen to her quite often, and then she will find something extremely conspiratorial and out there, like with the Bridget McCrone situation, and then she'll have these huge spikes.
Again, her worst month ever, she announced this new series, Slandering Erica Kirk. And would you look at that? Again, you can see it on the graph. The numbers went back up. She had found a pattern, and she would stick to it no matter what. By the way, as a side note, right when Candace Owens was brainstorming her Erica Kirk series, one of her main producers actually left the show. His name is Mark Herman. He resigned. I actually found a Reddit post where he himself says why he resigned. This is him at Reddit. He says, helping take that show to #1 was one of my greatest career accomplishments. Candace is absolutely still one of my good friends. We speak fairly regularly. I've been working on other projects on the side, and it reached a point where I needed the bandwidth to focus on those. My last day as an employee was in late January, but I stayed on as a contractor to help get the new guy up to speed. The last episode I directed was her open letter to Erica Kirk, episode 303. Getting the show to #1 was the priority, no matter what, to Candace and her producers. And in the same post, he later says that he does not agree with Candace on everything, which I found interesting. I think Mark Herman resigned right when Candace went full mask off against Erica Kirk. You can see it in the timeline. And I do also believe him when he says that he's still friends with Candace. I don't think they fell out, but I do also believe he left because he didn't want anything to do with that series, because that series will stain those producers for life. The only other people those producers are ever going to be able to get a job with is either like Ian Carroll or maybe some Iranian state-sponsored broadcasting. Now, I show you all of that so everybody understands Candace Owens runs a business, and it is a business that has no standards or values. She sees a pattern that makes a lot of money, and she follows it. That is her business standard, her business value. The people who get in the way of that are just collateral. whether that be Charlie Kirk or Erica Kirk or any of the people that she's defamed along the way. And this is where we get into the actual dollars and cents, why you guys are here. Fortunately, because I work in this industry, I know how the pay structures work. I know how much the sponsors pay, and I know how to get that information. So I have it here for you to see. Before I show you, just for fun, I want you to comment down below how much you think she's made off of her pseudo investigation of Charlie Kirk in the last 6 months. The reason why I want you to do this is the number's astounding. And I don't think there's many people who are going to come even close. So comment down below before I reveal it. And if you're close, maybe I'll respond to you and I'll give you kudos for getting the numbers. So here are the numbers. Candace gets an average of 3.6 million views per episode. That's been the last 6 months, an average. About 1.21 million of that is on YouTube each day. And the rest can be attributed to other podcast apps like Spotify or Apple or Amazon. And since she's only posting on the weekdays, that comes out to about 2.57 million views per day, every day for the last 6 months. Now, if you look at her show, she has every single day 4 sponsors, each of which she does what is called a host-read mid-roll. And if you don't know what that is, a host-read mid-roll simply means that she is the host of the show and she reads an ad in the middle of the show, not at the beginning or at the end. And because it's host-read, it's worth a little bit more to a company. And so, rather than if they just stuck an ad in the middle, because the host is actually saying it. This is how these pay structures tend to go. It's with something called a CPM deal. CPM stands for cost per mil meaning 1,000 in Latin. And essentially it's a dollar amount that the company's willing to pay per 1,000 views that you get. And in my experience, the industry usually pays between $20 and $40 per 1,000 views. That's what the CPM would be. Sometimes if you're really famous, maybe for Candace Owens, those numbers might be higher, like $50, $60, even $80 at the really high end. And again, Candace has 4 of those every single video. So let's assume that her sponsors pay a CPM of $30, which I think is very conservative and I think it's very realistic. That means her daily revenue from sponsors alone is $308,400. Now, the other revenue source she takes in is from YouTube ads as well. She gets 1.21 million views from YouTube. CPMs on YouTube are much lower.
It blows my mind. Like, why would they be paying her that much money? Oh, I can see my cat. I think that's my cat. I don't know what else it would be. Nobody's in here. So hopefully that's my cat. One of them anyway.
Lower since it's not host read on YouTube. I think maybe $10 per 1,000 views would be a conservative estimate for a podcast length video. And that would mean that she makes an additional $12,142 a day from YouTube. So here is the grand total, guys. Charlie Kirk died 6 months ago. In that time, she's produced 79 episodes over 184 days. And in that amount of time, Candace Owens has made $59 million. $59 million. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to hear that and they're going to think that is an unfathomably large number. There's no way that's real. That's got to be exaggerated or fabricated, guys. It is not. And for some context, podcasting is a huge industry. And Candace Owens does get a lot of views. Just in the past few years, podcasting services have offered several people hundreds of millions of dollars just to go on the platform. That is not even including the ad revenue. Just to show you some examples of this, you have the big famous one, which is Joe Rogan. Spotify paid him $250 million, and it wasn't even exclusive to go onto their platform and host his show there. You have one with Alex Cooper, who's the Call Her Daddy host, $125 million with SiriusXM. You had a $100 million deal with SiriusXM with Jason Bateman, and Bill Simmons did one for $250 million on Spotify in 2020. So the money in podcasting is massive, and Candace Owens has taken full advantage.
Okay, so that is wild. Wild. Now, I want to show you another video because he said in here that Candace Owens has built her career off of doing this, right? And I also want to say that this makes me so angry and disgusted because imagine making your money like this, but then also people literally come into my YouTube chat and they say things like, oh, you're a grifter, who's paying you? You guys, the mind-numbing, illogical nonsense that I have to deal with on a daily basis and that we all have to deal with on a daily basis if we're on social media, just even a regular person that doesn't have a YouTube channel, like being on social media, the people that we have to deal with are the most brain dead, illogical people in the world. Somebody comes to me, a person who literally just started a YouTube channel 4 months ago, and they literally ask me, who is paying me? And that I'm grifting. I have made literally $1.99. And actually, it's less than that because YouTube takes like 30%. And I don't even get that because you have to have a certain amount in there for it to even be dispersed. That is how much I've made since I've had a YouTube channel. Do you know how frustrating it is to wake up in the morning and go to check my YouTube comments and see stuff like that in my messages? Because I check them first thing when I have time, like I don't wake up and come right here, but like after I do my whatever in the morning, I come here and I check my YouTube comments and reply to people. And just to let people know, I don't think they're watching this show. I think they're just coming here and making comments. But if you make comments in my comment section that says, I'm working for Israel, or, oh, support the war more, find excuses to kill people in the Middle East or whatever, your comment is getting deleted. Because one, I'm not going to let the algorithm think that that's what this show's about. And two, that's not what this show is about. There is nothing in this video talking about any of that stuff in any of my videos. Has nothing to do with geopolitics. If it was on a video where I'm actually talking about that, that would be one thing. But they come in here and they leave all these comments about how this ridiculous JQ stuff. And this video has nothing to do with that. None of these videos have anything to do with that. So it's like, that's not even the topic. Like, why are you coming in here? I'm not leaving them up. Okay. And then also, like, sometimes YouTube will show me that there's a comment, but when I click on it, it goes away. Nothing is there. And I'm not for sure why. I don't know why it's doing that. But so sometimes if I didn't reply to your comment or you don't see it, YouTube is doing something to it. So if you ever were not doing that, but then I still never responded to you, that's why. Okay, so this video is called, Is Candace Owens' Business Model Built Off Defamation?
California attorney. And backed by popular demand, we're discussing Candace Owens. This time, we're not just talking about her lawsuits. We're talking about her entire business model. When you put together the Macron saga, the Erica Kirk assassination theories, and years of conspiracies about Israel, Egypt, and even the United States, does it start to look like commentary or like defamation as part of the product? Start with the scale of the Candace Owens business. Reporting estimates her company brings in up to the low to mid single-digit millions per year from a mix of YouTube, a high ad density podcast with dozens of rotating sponsors, speaking fees, merchandise, and books. In that conservative media ecosystems, advertisers pay premium rates to be in front of her audience, and outlets from Fortune to Bloomberg point out the more provocative and conspiratorial the content, the more it tends to blow up, which means more views, higher ad rates, and more money flowing through her whole operation. One example, in Delaware, Emmanuel and Bridget Macron say Owens took a debunked rumor that Bridget is secretly a man, tied it to incest and abuse of power, and turned it into a recurring Becoming Bridget arc across platforms. Their complaint does not just call it hurtful. It says she used these verifiably false and devastating claims to promote her platform, gain notoriety, and generate income, and even weaponize their retraction letters as more content. Another example, Erica Kirk. She's now on CBS saying her one-word message to Owens is stop, because Owens is making serious money while spinning multi-episode assassination and fraud narratives around Charlie's death that repeatedly drag Erica, Turning Point USA, and foreign actors into the story. Erica's concern is not abstract. She says that these theories are bleeding into how the public and potential jurors see a real murder case, the same way the Macrons say Candace's series is bleeding into how the world sees Bridget's identity. Zoom out again, and the targets get bigger. Owens has spent years accusing countries like Israel and Egypt and others, and sometimes even the United States government itself, of staging attacks, assassinations, and wars as part of hidden plots, including claims about Israel deliberately attacking American ships like the USS Liberty. These are marketed as just asking questions, but they present detailed stories about who did what and why, which pushes them towards specific factual allegations, not just, I don't like this policy. When you line up the Macrons, Erica Kirk, and the country-level conspiracies, the pattern looks like a playbook. Pick a shocking theory, attach it to real names and institutions, serialize it across shows and platforms, and let the outrage drive attention. Business coverage notes that her most controversial arcs often bring the biggest engagement and economic upside, which is why critics and the Macrons in their complaint describe these narratives as a campaign that also happens to be profitable. And quick note to Candace's followers, no one is paying me to say this. I'm not being paid by the Macrons, by Erica Kirk, by Israel, by Egypt, or any political organization to make these videos. I do this because I'm a California attorney who actually enjoys explaining how how defamation and speech law work when massive platforms collide with real people and real nations. And if business ever comes from that for me, it's because viewers think I'm good at my job as an attorney, not because anybody bought my opinion. And if Candace Owens ever wants to test my channel in court, I invite that sweetheart, and California would be an interesting place to do it. California's anti-slap law gives strong protection to speech about public figures and public issues, and lets you ask for your fees if someone files a lawsuit just to shut up that speech, especially when you're accurately describing public lawsuits and major reporting. If you want more blunt breakdowns like this, please hit like, drop a comment.
Okay. See what I mean? Like, this isn't just something I've come up with. Bloomberg talks about it. This guy talks about it. This guy that she has as a PR manager helps her plan it all. It's all a plan. It's a business model. It's the way her business is structured. And it's really sick because these are real people that she's just making up lies about and smear campaigning. And she doesn't care who it hurts or how they feel about it, because I can tell you what, it doesn't feel good. These people are probably very stressed out, very concerned having this happen when this happens to them, when she focuses on somebody. Okay, let's go back to the article. Her claims grew wilder by the day. Her rage burned hotter. Her certainty formed long before evidence hardened. She dismissed outright the possibility that Tyler had climbed a stairwell, taken aim, and pulled a trigger. Under the banner of her investigation, in quotations, Candace crowdsourced sensational fragments and stitched them into a conspiracy so sprawling that it seemed anyone not named Candace Owens might be a suspect. Ironic, since her own efforts to monetize the murder would have made her a prime target for investigators assessing the crime by her own standards. On Candace, Charlie was reborn, the leading man to a leading woman of the weekday program. The rest were deemed fake and gay, her catchphrase, either active or ignorant participants in a psyop that had taken Charlie from her and deprived Turning Point of their benevolent influence. Before it took Charlie from the world. In her distorted reality, the harm caused by her investigation was justified by the harm she claimed others had caused. I heard from some of them. The wife of a Turning Point staff member called me hysterical one morning. Her husband had participated in an event Charlie himself had arranged in the Hamptons, which Candace framed in a sinister light based on little knowledge and thin connections to any of the influencers invited. It didn't matter. Where details lapsed, she planted new angles. She identified this woman's husband as an object of suspicion, and her followers responded by sending him threats. "She's getting everything wrong," the source cried on the phone that morning. "How could she do this?" She'd done it before. She'd do it again. Okay, so I thought we would travel around and just look at some videos about what people were saying, because Candace Owens quickly went from they're lying about Charlie Kirk to very quickly suspicion being put on people around Charlie Kirk. So it started with Israel, then it moved on to other people that were close around Charlie Kirk, all the way to literally his entire organization betrayed him, and all these like crazy insinuations that many people took for what she was insinuating, right? And so let's go on a journey on YouTube with some of that stuff.
Money makes people do strange things. Desperation makes people do strange things. And then when you add the narcissism on top of it, a narcissist will do anything to stay relevant. They don't care. I've followed and been deceived by a narcissist before. I've been the object of narcissistic attacks. I know the patterns. I know it well. A narcissist will build a cult following by mixing just enough truth into a whole web of lies and got everybody over there just running. And they just all looking crazy. The stuff they come up with, you'll be like, y'all need help. You will wear yourself out trying to make sense of it all and to keep up with all their lies, because it's a deceptive web of just wrongshousness that they're weaving. I believe this woman she's deliberately ending every show on a cliffhanger, but then the next day, she never actually picks up on the outrageous thing that she said before. She has yet to address the Bibi Netanyahu letter that she confidently said was misrepresented. Her whole audience, her own audience, is now holding her accountable by asking for clarification or retraction. It's almost like it never happened. I've even seen Brandon Tatum. God bless him. Now, that's his girl. That's his friend. And he's being a real good friend to her because he made a video and he didn't use her name, but he's like, all right, the letter is out. Let's look at the letter. And this letter, in comparison to the claims that was made, somebody's lying. That's what he said. Somebody's lying. Go look at the video for yourself. I think it's either on the thumbnail or the title of the video. He like, somebody's lying. He's like, so are you going to do the right thing and come back and correct the record? Are you going to do a retraction? Have we seen it? Has she talked about that letter at all? No, they never do. She did the same thing with this claim that Turning Point was about to bring her back on staff, which girl, where my flag on?
Flag on the plate.
That is an absolute false claim. She is delusional if she thinks that. She's delusional. That was not happening. In my opinion, that's a delusion along the same lines of her being Charlie's best friend as of late is a delusion. Early years, no one discounts that. But you was his best friend? How you best friends? You don't even follow your friend, your bestie don't follow you on no social media platform. Not X, Instagram. Charlie was going to bring you back. He didn't even follow you on no social media. Really? That's the story. That's what we're doing. Here's the scary part, though. Her followers never ask any basic questions. Nobody says, Candace, well, what evidence do you have that Charlie was praying the rosary? Like, where do you get a claim like that from? Or is anyone asked Candace, how do you know that tpusa was going to bring you back? On what basis are you making that assertion? Let me be clear. Charlie was not on the verge of converting to Roman Catholicism. No. Charlie affirmed salvation by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone, for the glory of God alone, all affirmed by scripture alone. Let's make that clear. Here's the kind of thing that Candace does. Like, I could drive past a Catholic church and remark, wow, what a beautiful building that is. Oh, that's just beautiful. I love pretty buildings. Candace gonna spin that into, well, April Chapman, she's converted to Catholicism. She was just at confession yesterday. How you get that from that? Just because I drive by a beautiful Catholic church and I say, oh, wow, that's a beautiful church. According to Candace, that means, April's going to confession. And she had just met with a priest, to discuss confirmation. Listen, y'all, once a narcissist builds a loyal following, truth don't matter no more. Evidence doesn't matter. The cult dynamic has kicked in. That is how the grift works. You take a detail, inflate it, turn it into a narrative, feed it to an audience who's too loyal and too undiscerning to question it anyway. And the results are clear. Okay. The Macron narrative and now the Charlie Kirk conspiracy are huge paydays compared to them tanking views. Did we see them flatline tanking views? Did we see it? I see it. Do we see it? The grift is real. Don't hate the player. You got to hate the game. I guess you just got to hate the game. But in this case, I got to mark and avoid the player because the circumstances of the grift, it's like, have you no shame? This is why the Apostle Paul said, watch out for those who cause divisions and create obstacles contrary to the doctrine that you've been taught. Avoid them.
And that, my friends, is why I called this series Candace Owens and the Narrative Machine. Because that's what she does. She is a narrative machine. It's funny that she mentioned Paul, the New Testament. There's another thing the New Testament said. Let me pull that up. 2 Timothy chapter 3. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning and never being able to come to the knowledge of truth. Boy, when Bible verses hit home, man, is she not going into the homes of silly women? Is she not leading silly women away captive, laden with their own sins, ever learning but never being able to come to the knowledge of truth? Interesting. Let's go back to YouTube. Okay, so this video is called Candace Owens is Making a Rancid Case Against Turning Point USA.
Nothing to see here, just a major right-wing influencer making the most heinous insinuations of tpusa after Charlie Kirk's assassination.
It reeks of an inside job. That is how I feel. And the more that we learn about the story, the little changes that happen, the inexplicable things that we're learning, it becomes clear.
Watch how she smiles. What that is called is duper's delight. That's a real thing. Let me show you. Duper's delight is a psychological phenomenon coined by psychologist Paul Ekman in 1992, referring to the involuntary pleasure or thrill a person feels when they successfully deceive someone and get away with it. It is characterized by a dopamine rush similar to a cheater's high, which can become addictive and lead to repeated dishonesty, often without the liar feeling guilt or remorse. The emotion is frequently visible through involuntary micro-expressions or leaks, such as a fleeting smirk, inappropriate smiling, lip biting, or crinkling eyes, which betray the deceiver's inner satisfaction. She doesn't have to, she's very overt. So she's, like you'll see that with people who are trying to be like super serious and fool people. This is what like psychopaths all do this and stuff, and people with Munchausen's disease and stuff. So they're not gonna be smiling at the doctor, right, when they're trying to poison their child to death or get them to have dangerous surgeries. So they're not gonna be smiling, right? She's very overt about it, so she does smile a lot, but that's what it's meaning. Like there'll be like little ticks on a person that's doing this. This behavior is particularly common in individuals with narcissistic or psychopathic traits who may derive a sense of power, control, and contempt for their target out of the act of manipulation. Duper's delight. I see that all over her all the time. So keep an eye out for that when you're watching her.
Clearer and clearer that somehow at some layer, at some stage, Turning Point USA is involved.
Hey everyone, Rich Lowry of National Review here, and that of course was the crackpot influencer Candace Owens making the case that somehow, for some reason, tpusa was in on the murder of its own founder, Charlie Kirk. Now this is an open and shut murder case. Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk in the neck from relatively close range with a rifle from a nearby rooftop after fulminating about what a hater Charlie supposedly was. But Candace has dismissed that and instead launched her own investigation, as she calls it, episode after episode of innuendo, insinuation, ridiculous theorizing. She focuses on minutia. She asks her viewers and listeners for help tracking down supposed leads. She makes dark insinuations, as we just heard, about tpusa, about the Trump administration, about, of course, the Jews and Israel, and suggests these dark and shadowy, as yet unknown forces responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk are coming after her next. She is the podcasting equivalent of the reprehensible New Orleans prosecutor, Jim Garrison, who, in pursuit of ridiculous, preposterous conspiracy theories about the assassination of JFK, ruined the life of an innocent man he prosecuted named Clay Shaw. This didn't stop Oliver Stone from valorizing Garrison in his movie JFK. The prosecutor was played, of course, by Kevin Costner.
Garrison?
Yes?
Glad you came. Sorry about the precautions.
Well, I just hope it was worth my while, Mr.
I could give you a false name, but I won't. Just call me X.
Despite Oliver Stone making Garrison into a hero, he was a loathsome nut. As George Will wrote of Garrison, he, quote, staged an assassination investigation that involved recklessness, cruelty, abuse of power, publicity mongering, and dishonesty, all on a scale that strongly suggested lunacy leavened by cynicism. Now, most of that applies incredibly aptly to Candace Owens, who's a thoroughgoing conspiracy theorist and a hallmark of her advocacy in support of these ideas is that she doesn't know nearly as much as she thinks she does. Check out this take from Candace on why the moon landing was fake.
And so there's a basic thing that you guys can do. If you're like somebody who's like, it had to have happened, the moon landing, what you can do is look up, I'm calling this the firmament, but it's the, what is the belt that the 200 miles out, you hit the
asteroid belt? No.
Van Allen belt. Okay, so there's a Van Allen belt. So we have never gone beyond that belt, right? There's been no human that's gone beyond that belt since the moon landings, allegedly. And not even Elon Musk, when they go out to space, they have to stay, like there is a space station, but like once you get 200 miles out, you hit the Van Allen belt, which has an incredible amount of radiation. NASA has said, like, in order for us to get through it, we'd have to have cement blocks around someone.
Let's give her some credit. She eventually did come up with the name of the Van Allen belts. These are radiation belts around the Earth. NASA was indeed concerned with them during the Apollo mission and went out of its way to plan carefully to limit the spacecraft's exposure in the Van Allen belt. Mystery solved, but Candace still thinks that Stanley Kubrick, the great director, actually staged the moon landing. Then there's her take on dinosaurs.
This conversation happened and it was so funny. I was just walking with Savannah, my manager, because we do like these little evening walks, and I just looked at her and I was like, dinosaurs, that seems pretty fake and gay.
I'll give her this. Brontosauruses do seem a little like that uncle who mysteriously never got married and you're always wondering why. But her theory here is based on the idea that only paleontologists have found dinosaur bones. Therefore, there must be conspiracy among paleontologists to manufacture dinosaur bones in order to undermine faith in God, when the fact is non-paleontologists have found dinosaur bones all the time. Now, a lot of her conspiracy theories have to do with the Jews in Israel. Here's a partial list compiled by the ex-account A.G. Hamilton of her various theories. They include that Israel is involved with September 11th, that Jews were behind the Bolshevik Revolution in order to carry out a genocide against Christians, Holocaust, fake or exaggerated, crimes of the Allies in World War II worse than the Nazis, Israel and AIPAC carried out the JFK assassination, a secret cabal of Jews killed Michael Jackson, Ataturk, secret Jew, Stalin, secret Jew, Harvard, a Zionist base, a Mossad base. I guess it makes sense if Israel was to carry out a strike against, say, Tufts. Jeffrey Epstein, of course, a Mossad spy. Here's an interesting.
The Stalin was a Jew thing just drives me crazy. It's one of the ones that people say that I just like, it drives me nuts. It makes me really upset because I am really into, like, you know, history in Eastern Europe and stuff. And that is the most ridiculous, easily verifiable, utterly false lie that you could ever, like, I mean, you know what I mean? Some of these, they're hard, you know, that's the thing about conspiracy theories. They're hard to disprove. But with the Stalin was a Jew one, it's like literally just ask Grok. Like, it's so bad. It drives me crazy. And I heard it because a lot of, like, that's more of a recent one. And so I went and tracked it down, and somebody made a false genealogy document, and that's where some of them are getting it from. And then they tie like some kind of like statue that he put up for his mother, you know, by her grave or something, as like, oh, this is a Jewish statue, and it's not, it's like a Catholic thing. So, or an Orthodox, not Catholic, but Orthodox thing. So it's just silly.
One Zoran Mamdani, secret Zionist agent. You could have fooled me. Elie Wiesel, a liar, on and on. That brings us back to the Charlie Kirk assassination. She thinks Tyler Robinson isn't responsible, and for some very dumb reasons.
First and foremost, Tyler Robinson has never confessed. They acknowledge that. He has never confessed to this crime, and he still is pleading innocence on the shooting.
Well, of course he hasn't confessed to authorities. This is the one point of leverage he has to potentially avoid the death penalty. People who are guilty, criminals, say they're innocent and plead not guilty all the time. That doesn't prove anything. Now, she goes on to say later after that clip that she hears...
Actually, it's incredibly normal. You know, he did confess 5 separate times, which will be used in court against him if it ever ends up going to trial. But of course he didn't. He should be quiet and remain quiet and silent. That is his right. His lawyer would have advised him to that. As soon as the lawyer was in front of him, or a lawyer, you know, I'm sure he had a lawyer that was representing him until they found a lawyer for him or whatever. So, because you have to have a special lawyer if you're on being on a death penalty case. Not every lawyer can do that. You have to be a certified death penalty attorney for that. And this is like incredibly normal. Like people who were literally caught red-handed, like with a body, like carrying it, will also plead not guilty. And actually, he hasn't pled at all because we haven't had the preliminary hearing that keeps getting pushed back by his lawyers. So technically, he hasn't had a chance to even make a plea in front of the authorities yet. Because that's what he would do at the preliminary hearing. At the preliminary hearing, he's going to tell the judge, I plead not guilty. Nobody knows anything anymore. It drives me crazy.
That Robinson is bewildered by the idea that he carved messages into bullet casings. But again, what is he going to say? Just give authorities everything and lose any potential leverage he has in a case where there's a mountain of evidence against him, including these damning text messages he exchanged with his boyfriend in the immediate aftermath of the assassination. Now, Owens tries to wiggle out of that evidence by saying, oh, well, Robinson was a smart guy. There's no way he would have done anything so stupid as to put his guilt in writing in the immediate aftermath of the crime. But smart people commit crimes all the time, and it's a common impulse to want to confess to someone close to you. She also says the vocabulary in these text messages really puts them in doubt because he uses the word vehicle, and she pretends as though the word vehicle is incredibly rare, and there's no way Robinson, who she's characterized as a smart in other contexts, would use such a word. And then she
like, this is the way that this guy is saying all this is just so funny. It's terrible, though. This is horrible. What she's doing is horrible.
Uses video to try to prove this point from a traffic stop, the body cam footage of the cops. And it's true that Robinson uses the word car at certain points during that stop. He also uses the word vehicle. So she is dismissing all the clear, obvious evidence here because it doesn't suit her agenda of making this a big mystery and indicting shadowy forces. So what she says, instead of Robinson acting alone, no. This was a military operation. There are 2 shots and the rifle was fired just to cover up the sound of a handgun or another weapon at closer range.
It looks like a military operation. Everything that we see looks like a military operation on that day.
Doesn't.
And that's the problem.
QED, elementary, my dear Watson. So since there's no evidence for this whatsoever, she has to pile innuendo on top of innuendo and focus on minutia to create the sense that she's closing in on the shadowy forces really responsible here. Mike McCoy, the chief of staff of tpusa USA, made a phone call after Kirk's shooting. Isn't that suspicious? A guy in the neighborhood where Tyler Robinson was seen walking down the street on surveillance video or ring camera video. He works for an outfit that makes valves called Caldera Engineering. Let's investigate Caldera Engineering. Oh, they once hired a gay actor. Oh, they once did some work for Israel. Highly suspicious. Or Josh Hammer, the NatCon commentator.
You guys, I forgot about the valves.
Who conveniently for Candace's purposes is Jewish. He tweeted the day before Charlie was assassinated. Charlie was his friend. He tweeted about public execution, right? Isn't it really weird that Charlie the next day was executed in public? No, Josh Hammer was tweeting about the Charlotte train murder, and he was tweeting about the killer in that case. She's obsessed with an Egyptian plane. Not clear why an Egyptian plane matters here, but she's all about the tail numbers of the Egyptian plane and where it was going and at what altitude. So this is all misdirection, and she's engaging in the classic conspiratorial dynamic that the more something is denied, and really the more plausibly it's denied, the more it proves there must be something there. And by her own logic, she's got to go higher and higher with this and point a finger at the Trump administration, whose FBI is conducting the investigation that she must believe is fundamentally corrupt. This is what she had to say about Don Jr. the other day.
Man, oh man, you guys, I just am wondering how deep this thing really goes.
Yeah, of course, Candace. Trump officials are covering up the true murderers of their friend, Charlie Kirk, one of their chief advocates and organizers on the outside. This is crazy, but her game ultimately here is to get to her favorite target, the Jews.
There was nobody more psychotically insistent that people stop asking questions about Charlie's death immediately. I mean, early hours, right? Than the people that are dedicated to the Israel lobby.
Now, Owens has made much of some legitimate behind-the-scenes contention over Charlie's position on Israel towards the end. Publicly, throughout his career, very supportive of Israel. He hated the Groypers, these white nationalists. He clashed with them in public all the time. But there was a lot of discussion about where he was going to land on Israel publicly towards the end. And there was some donor dissatisfaction. Now, this is not unusual. When a donor gives a nonprofit or an advocacy group money, he or she is only doing that because he or she believes that the organization is going to reflect his or her priorities. And if it doesn't, then that donor might pull their funding. That's not a scandal. It's not unusual. If they are dissatisfied, yeah, they'll pull their money back. But what they won't do is immediately undertake a clandestine effort to assassinate the leader of the organization they've just pulled their funding from. This is crazy, but this is exactly what Candace is going after.
It's looking to me like the apparent plan was to assassinate Charlie Kirk, who had at long last faltered on the pro-Israel cause. Okay, his words, not mine. And then to stage a hostile takeover of his brand and of his legacy.
This gets back around to the clip we started with, that this is an inside job somehow. What is she saying there? She's saying that people who worked for Charlie Kirk, people who were friends with Charlie Kirk, people who loved Charlie.
So she starts saying that there's a hostile takeover of his brand, which is setting up that to then start saying that his wife, who should be that, okay, your husband creates a business, an organization that he poured his heart and soul in. You were with him, she got with him in 2018. Okay, so she's been with him basically this entire time, and you guys, she's working with him. They're building it together in a lot of ways because she's his, when you're married, you are one flesh. And then people think it's weird that the wife would then take over the role of being the head of the business. What is she supposed to just sell it off or something? What? It's unbelievable to me. The stuff that people saying about that. It is logically natural that she would do that. It makes no sense to me. It's crazy. But Candace Owens was starting that narrative and planting it in people's heads in the very beginning.
Kirk, people who looked up to Charlie Kirk as a mentor were responsible at a certain level for his murder. This must be causing great pain for Erica Kirk and everyone else at the organization. Here's someone with a large platform who has some inside information and therefore a little bit of credibility because she was friends with Charlie, suggesting that the organization he founded and the organization that Erica Kirk wants to keep running is so fundamentally corrupt that it bears guilt for the murder of its own founder and the father of Erica Kirk's children. For shame. For shame. But Candace Owens is so near pathologically self-involved and callous. She doesn't realize the pain that she is causing with these hideous and stupid conspiracy theories. Now, maybe
she loves it.
She doesn't matter much at the end of the day, that she's ultimately a marginal figure. Certainly her podcasts don't get the kind of attention, say, a Tucker Carlson interview does. And she doesn't have the power of, say, the aforementioned Jim Garrison, that prosecutor in New Orleans. But certainly, if she could get a good Dreyfus case going, get a good Clay Shaw type case going, she would. She is stoking conspiratorial thinking with a special focus on the Jews, who she maintains are capable of any infamy. This is a very online 21st century contribution to a rancid tradition from which nothing good has ever come. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.
Okay, so was that not crazy? What do you guys think about that? I forget about these things. I forgot about the Jewish valves, the evil Jewish valve company. Okay, so this video is called It's Unraveling. Candace Owens just lost the plot and Tom noticed why. So this is Tom Bailu. I don't know how to say his name. He's married to that girl, Lisa. She has a show. Is it Lisa? I'm pretty sure it's Lisa. Lisa Bailu. I can't pronounce her last name, but
hyper viral for her take on what actually happened to Charlie Kirk. But there's another take.
Candace Owens. Don't worry about the gag order in the Charlie Kirk case. I plan to violate it on the world's behalf. The things I've discovered this past week are enough to burn the house down. Yes, Charlie was betrayed by everyone. Dun, dun, dun. And then she disappears for 2 weeks. I love Candace.
You're not worried that she's going full conspiracy.
What is full conspiracy?
Let's define it. They don't have an internal map for how to judge whether something is plausible or merely intriguing. I think that Candace is seeing patterns where they don't exist. There's a big difference for me between somebody like Joe Rogan, who enjoys conspiracies but feels very tethered to reality, and somebody like Alex Jones, who even though he really does find a lot of this early stuff, if you watch.
Okay, so this is really important because I feel like that conspiracy theorists used to be like Joe Rogan, where it's like, oh, this is interesting. Let's look into this. Let's see what's going on with this. You know, and there may be something there may not be, but you're not like married to it and going crazy and running around social media yelling at everyone and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You might post on like your own social media or something, but like going around yelling at everyone, I mean, I never did that. I am a conspiracy theorist, but like I keep it kind of to myself unless, you know, I am talking with a friend or something, and I'm not trying to destroy people's lives. And you also have to, like, a lot of this stuff is like, you have to admit that it's tenuous. You can't just be like, this, you know, is for sure. You have to, like he said, be tethered to reality and just be like, oh, that's funny, or that's curious, or that's interesting or fun. They're not, conspiracy theories are not supposed to be this all-encompassing, drag you down, you know, the world is ending, horrible feeling, you know.
His channel literally every day is World War III. And everything is a conspiracy. Candace has sort of marched her way out of the journalist box that I had her in my mind over into the I see patterns where patterns don't exist conspiracy theory box. I worry that she isn't using an internal rubric with which to anchor herself to say, okay, these things probably aren't true. She can make a wild claim and produce receipts, but then another person can come along with receipts that counter it. I've got that internal metric by which I judge things, and so I make my decisions based on that. It feels like Candace has lost that. She doesn't, or maybe never had, but she doesn't have anything that she comes back to and says, like I say, I know better than to trust myself 100%. Just blanket. So I think I have all the receipts. I still don't trust myself 100%. She trusts herself 1,000%, and I cannot figure out how life has taught anybody that that's the right thing to judge things by.
So to me, like, there's so much political goodwill that came from Charlie Kirk's death. There's so much political benefits that happen from it. Even if it's 1% of me, I do have a certain level of suspicion to how clean it was.
Admittedly, when I craft a deep dive, I'm writing from a very specific angle and I'm saying these are the things that I believe to be true. But I know those are constellations. When you look up at the sky, you really do see stars. The constellations are made up, but the constellations help you navigate. Oh, these are made up, but they're useful. Then if you start over indexing on these are so useful that I'm going to forget that they're made up, you run into trouble. And that's how you end up crashing. This is useful, but its utility is going to be limited by the fact that it is made up. And so I want to get closer and closer to truth. I feel like these guys are getting stuck because it's so lucrative from a YouTube perspective. They're getting stuck in the constellation of it all instead of realizing those are just approximations, start drilling down even deeper and really start fact checking and getting to the truth. Being on the ground and reporting from the ground, I think adds a ton of credibility. Now, I don't know if Candace has, it's possible she has, but I think that's a pretty important takeaway here. We don't know what the truth is yet. He's got to.
No, she hasn't. She's never went on the ground. She's not doing any of that. In fact, the people that do that get shamed and harassed and called terrible names. Gary Milton, for example, shout out to Paramount Tactical. He actually did go on the ground. He put a lot of money into researching, and he's interviewed tons of eyewitnesses, cameramen. He made a whole 3D model of the whole thing and map the whole thing out with actual, like, he had to pay someone to do that and fly a drone and stuff. And yet he gets mocked as like this terrible person, even though he did it to help the community figure out, to know what was happening, to be able to see things and stuff like that. So the actual people that did do that, she treats terribly, her and her followers.
Counterpoint to all of Candace's claims, and I found it very interesting that they sound plausible as well. I'm not saying he's right and Candace is wrong. I think people are right to question this stuff. I think people are right to think for themselves. But one thing that I have found extraordinarily useful in my life is once I have a belief about something, the economy, inflation, all that, I want to go find people that are like, no, this is all good. And I want to hear what they have to say. I want to understand what the argument is on the other side. If you can't argue the other person's side, you don't understand very much of it. I think a lot of times people build their entire frame of reference because they go down one path with one person that they trust. They build a worldview. They just pair it back what that person is telling them, but they're not actually building up from cause and effect. So you don't want to put yourself in the echo chamber where you're just hearing the thing you want to hear all day. You want to find the people that say the exact opposite thing that you believe. But if you force yourself to go outside of that, you can really begin to make your worldview useful. You want to find what is true, thinking up from first principles, thinking of the world through the lens of physics. The big thing I'm like, not enough people are talking about for me is that his shirt, like, puffs up
Yeah.
right before he gets hit. And so what they're saying is that's they just keep, I believe the word they keep using is concavity, that's essentially what I'm imagining to be the air moving around it as the bullet is coming towards him. And so the disturbance in the air, I guess, hits him before the bullet actually hits him. He goes in Discord and essentially admits to the crime. This is not somebody who was like, oh, I'm definitely going to get away with this. It feels more and more like this was somebody who did it. They were prepared to be a martyr. They wanted to make sure that nobody else got in trouble for this. That seems like a very plausible read.
Aluminum foil hats are very out right now. They're calling this just another dude on the internet talking.
So rather than dismiss the arguments by saying he's just another guy on the internet, show me how the things that he's saying don't make sense. Because if there's a breakdown in the logic, fair enough. Could it be that the government is involved in this? Like, that seems wild, but okay, maybe. But when I hear another plausible explanation, I'm like, oh, that's also very plausible. And if I'm honest, is Occam's razor. It's the most simple answer and therefore is the most likely to be true. If I had to put a front runner of, I need an answer for why those texts don't feel right. Now I have an answer that fits Occam's razor better, does not require there to be some big conspiracy. Watching that interview, I was like, oh, this guy puts together things. I didn't know that they found like scrape marks that potentially match a weapon being behind him. When he jumped down, I didn't notice the gray towel, but people are saying, no, if you really freeze frame it, you can see that there's like a gray towel behind him, that he at least claimed that the gun was wrapped in a towel. And I believe the authorities have confirmed that they found it in a towel. Then, okay, it does seem to be a thing that could potentially be a towel. And they see scrape marks that this guy at least is saying he saw with his own eyes, that, okay, it's even got a ruler next to it or a tape measure. So you can see how long the scrape is. So it's potential, certainly not definitive at this point, but it gives you the ability to think through the arguments again, just from first principles. Like, could this be plausible? If it can be plausible, then how exactly are we ruling it out? So I'm not saying that this isn't a conspiracy. I'm just saying there are other plausible arguments that are being put forward, and it's a little premature to leap to, 100% because Charlie Kirk said that he's going to stop being pro-Israel, that he was killed by the Jews.
Okay, so what did you guys think about that? I mean, it's just so true. I do that all the time. Like, if I hear something and I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting, like, what's up with that? I'll listen to it. I'll listen to several different people talk about it from the same mindset, from the same frame of reference. And then after I've got that argument down really well, I will go listen. I will type in whatever it is, thing, and then I'll put debunked or fake or hoax or, whatever opposite word from whatever you're researching, right? And then I'll start looking at all of those things so that I can form an idea that's not just from one place. You know what I mean? Those people that you're listening to, they believe that thing. Well, they could be wrong, like they could be lying for clicks. Who knows? Another thing conspiracy theorists fall into is once they realize that the government lies about things, then they just assume that everyone telling them stuff about the government lies also just never lies. Like, why would they have a reason to lie? They're not working for the government. What do they have an incentive to do such a thing, right? And so that's another thing that people will fall into. Okay, so let's listen to Tim Pool.
From Raw Story, Charlie Kirk was betrayed. Right-winger turns on Turning Point leadership after murder. Candace has, I would just describe it as officially gone for, I don't know, what would you describe this? The kill shot on Turning Point USA. She is not just implying that they were involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, but that everybody should get a refund. And she's trying to get them to pull their donations. She tweets, I received information last night that put the final pieces together for me. I now can say with full confidence that I believe Charlie Kirk was betrayed by the leadership of Turning Point USA and some of the very people who eulogized him on stage. Yes, I will be naming names and providing evidence for my claims. And I'm making a personal plea to every well-meaning person who donated to this godforsaken organization to request a refund. You were lied to, and leadership knew. Oh boy, Candace is doing everything she can to destroy Turning Point USA. And then we have we have this video. Evan Kilgore posted it. Candace Owens just said a close family friend of Andrew Colvett allegedly reached out to her and said that Andrew told them he lost out of millions when Charlie rejected the deal with Benjamin Netanyahu earlier this year. Let me play the clip for you from her show. It's a minute long.
We just can't all be hanging out in Delaware. And there's one more thing that came in regarding Andrew Colvett. Very close family friend of Andrew Colvett had messaged me early on. And I, again, was not tracking any of this at the time, but they had said that they felt that Andrew Colvett was acting weird, and I'm sure that's not a big deal. I think
Okay, realize that none of this is true. This entire story she's just making up. Okay? Turning Point can't take foreign money like that. And they didn't take foreign money, which they've repeated a bunch of times. They're a political organization. You think they could just take foreign money? That's not how it works. There's like laws and stuff.
You were all acting weird. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. But moreover, they had mentioned that specifically Andrew had told them that when Charlie said no to Bibi, he lost out on millions. Now I'm going to say allegedly because it's a tip, but I have that tip in writing. I'm not lying to you. And I thought to myself, that is so weird. How could the spokesperson at Turning Point USA be on the, how could they be gaining millions from that? What's the structure here of these contracts that even people that are in PR, people that are like running PR departments are getting tips on the basis of donations? I don't know how this is working, but we need to figure out how this is working. I think it's really important that we learn the truth about what happened. And has Turning Point been paid? Obviously, it wouldn't be on this year's taxes. You're not going to find those on this year's taxes, but they would be on next year's. But we can ask now.
You know, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about how the average reading level in the United States is around like 7th grade. And I think she first had the 8th grade. And I was like, you know, this is funny because this just came up on Timcast earlier the other night. I think it's actually around 7th grade. And then I was like, I double checked because we pulled up the data. And it actually ranges from between 5th to 8th grade. So it's like 6th, 7th grade reading level. And if I don't think Candace is stupid. I think she's actually super intelligent. I think she's a genius. And what I mean by that is not that she's a good person, but I believe that she is extremely aware. She is quick to learn and understand what she's doing. That's why I think what she's doing is amoral, is wrong. It's immoral. Because the way she just phrased all of that to imply that there was some illicit deal with Andrew Colvett in Israel, it's exactly what she's been doing. And I'm going to say this, much to the, I suppose.
So Tim Pool is right here. Like, she will phrase things in such a way, she uses very manipulative cult-like tactics. And it sort of is lulling too. If you like listen to her for a while, the cadence that she uses is lulling, like I'm from the Midwest, Lull, lulling to sleep, makes you sort of like zone a little bit. And then the way she sets things up, she's already putting the framing in your mind. So she's planting a seed before she tells you what she wants you to believe. And that is really powerful. Okay, I know it sounds like, why would it be? But it actually is. Like, this is like researched and stuff. She probably like studied neuro-lingual programming, I bet. That's something I should look into. I wonder if she did any NLP, neuro-lingual programming.
It'll sound elitist and insulting, but the people of low reading comprehension who can't parse through the manipulations, they believe this. I was at the poker room over the weekend, and there were these young guys who were like, "Did you hear that Candace is in hiding now because Israel and like they're trying to kill her over this Charlie stuff?" And I said, "You mean how she posted her show was off the air for the week because it was Thanksgiving?" And they were like, "She didn't say that." I'm like, "Yeah, she didn't say anything. It was vague. That's what she does, vagaries, so that you connect the dots and you can believe whatever it is you want to believe without her actually having said anything."
Your brain fills
like
it in.
If Andrew Colvett is working at a nonprofit, or literally anybody works in a nonprofit, often you get commissions on, it's called development. If you bring in a large donor, you will get a commission. That is completely normal at nonprofits. You may not like it. People may say, I think it's wrong that you get a commission on donations, but nonprofits are the same as any other business. So executive directors at nonprofits, at big ones, are going to make $1 million salaries. And it is, I honestly think it's stupid that people get mad about this, because if you want CEO level talent, you have to pay CEO level wages. Usually it's not going to be identical. I think Charlie was getting, I think they say it was around $1 million between four different nonprofits, and he was worth substantially more than his show alone was probably bringing way more anyway. But if Colvett or literally anybody was organizing some kind of deal, be it with Netanyahu or anyone else, now you can argue that in of itself is wrong. But getting a commission on a donation is actually fairly routine for big organizations, especially when someone is working with, they call it development. So the insinuation now is that Turning Point USA killed Charlie, but the sledgehammer, of course, is when she says everybody should request a refund from this organization. Now, obviously, y'all know that, we have the minorest of drama issues with Turning Point. We're not going to be there at AmFest, but it is what it is. I ain't crying about it. I talk to these guys relatively often, so whatever. But the idea that you would try to destroy them and get everybody to pull their donations using the insinuation they murdered Charlie Kirk is evil. It's evil.
My whole thing with this, because I get asked about, what do you think about what Candace did? Look, I got no problem with people that want to question the official narrative. No problem. I got questions about the whole, 30-06 caliber, and is this really going to, do the damage, et cetera. Sure. What I don't understand, though, and I worded it to someone this way once. I said, if I spent my entire life building an organization that I truly believed in, and I built a life with my wife, who I absolutely loved, and somebody came out and started making accusations that both the organization that I built and dedicated my life to, and the women I dedicated my life to, were somehow complicit in my murder, I would hope that they had real receipts before they were willing to put my wife or my organization, my life's work, on the line for that. Again, you can ask all you want, but I would hope before people would believe that, you would actually be bringing something fairly concrete.
As Candace, man, I'd hope that. Well, I can only imagine that if/when I die, I got a lot of text messages with people that can be made to say, you know, I wonder if I could like, you could take any text message from me to anybody else and make it sound crazy. Let me see if I can find,
especially Tim's.
Well, hold on, I'm grabbing Phil over here. Let's see. Hold on. What is this? What is this?
I'm sure that there are sufficient text messages in my phone that would do me in.
I'm trying to find a text from Phil that's not really like bad. It's kind of vague.
Just hard R's, straight hard R's all the time.
I mean, it's just the N-word like crazy. I don't want to read any of those. No, but like, I'm not going to read anything explicitly, but like the point I'm making is I just pulled up the text I have with Phil. And here's one. Hey, Tim, thanks again for today. When you get a chance, can you shoot me Chad's number? And then all I have to do is go, here's a message from Phil. Chad, I remember that day when we were all hanging out. It was so sad. And, you know, Phil looked at me and he said, brother, we're in this together. And I went, I'm right there with you, man. That's what she's doing. She's just showing like any random text. And it's just, it's really gross.
How much stuff has she actually shown? I'm not
today,
following.
So I can't say that I've watched every episode she's ever done, but I watched her show today. And what I will say is when everyone, I've watched a handful of her shows. I've watched the ones that are relevant to what's been going on, but I don't follow all of it. And then I always hear people be like, she's not claiming Turning Point was involved. And I'm like, then you didn't watch the show where she was like, inside job. That's how I feel. I have no, what else can you think?
Regicide.
Yeah, regicide.
And the fact that she says things like, the caveat's always, that's how I feel. And it's not any kind of actually substantial evidence. It's all implication, and she's covering her tracks by saying, this is how I feel. I hate the whole thing, like from top to bottom. All of the stuff all of the people talking about Charlie's murder, post Charlie's murder, it all just seems like, you know, sharks in the water looking to pick up their little bit of you know, whatever they can get attention they can get.
I have to say this, but I'm not going to say who told me it. But, you know, this issue, of course, comes up in these private circles. I get asked by a lot of people I meet who know who I am. The first thing they ask me about is Candace and what she said about Turning Point. And I have to be like, let's just stop and analyze what she said. And like, you tell me what you think. But someone today was talking to me about it, and they were just like, you know, Candace has made a lot of insinuations. And this latest one with like Andrew Colvette losing millions of dollars, like the implication that he's going after Charlie or whatever. And then this person I'm talking to goes like, you know, he's not a chess player. And that's like the nicest way of saying, with all due respect to Colvette, that he doesn't have the capability to plot something of this. I'm not trying to be a dick.
Yeah.
But like the insinuation that their spokesperson had the capability to map out this plan involving the French Foreign Legion and Israeli spies and like
the people at Turning Point, like they all stood to make significantly more money with Charlie at the helm than after Charlie's passed away.
But who, real quick, but that's correct. Now, who stands to make the most money from this story?
Currently, it seems like Candace Owens.
Indeed. Talking about how she's the biggest podcast, connecting this with the Macrones to tie it to the Bridget Macron is a man thing. I got to be honest, right now, we're looking at dropping CPMs for political content. I was having a conversation, you know, it's kind of a vague thing to say because I don't want to drag other prominent personalities. But let me just say this. I routinely talk with Jack Posobiec and Benny Johnson and Steven Crowder and a bunch of these guys, as well as ad bookers, buyers. We have these conversations all the time. And you know what I can say? This one I have no problem actually mentioning. I was talking with Jeremy Hambley from The Quartering. And because he's made several videos talking about the decline of political content, viewership, CPMs. And I told him, I was like, well, look, I got to be honest. There were some people who came up to Tate, producer Tate, and mentioned like, how come Tim's views are still good? Like everyone else is dropping. And I'm like, well, you know, our viewership has gone down for sure in the season, but you know, my morning show's doing pretty much the same as it always has, minus like I was sick or like off for holidays. And so they asked these questions. I was talking to Jeremy Hambley about it, and I said, look, I got to be honest. How evil are you willing to be is the question. And when we're at the end of we're coming off the back year of this election season, it was abnormally large this year. It's supposed to be a dead year completely. After every election, everyone says, turn it off. I don't want politics. And we actually got to squeeze some out of it. You know, because Donald Trump was making bold moves. But now we're getting the holiday season and people are like, okay, enough. I want to hear about why the Bears are actually Bears are in first place. Is that what's going on?
In the NFL?
Yeah.
In the NFC East, is it?
I have no idea.
I know the Vikings are having a doo-doo season.
All I know is my buddies from Chicago are like, can you believe that the Bears are actually like leading? And I was like, is that true? That's what people care about right now.
Yeah.
But I said, listen, there's two things you can do. What most people do is they try to figure out what kind of content can I make that people actually are interested in. You know, we are in the business of trying to inform an audience on what they want, but also not just giving them red meat, right? The point is, can I cover new subjects you are interested in? So what we found inadvertently is that the space weather stuff does.
Bears are 9-3.
9-3. Right. It's massive.
Very good.
Seriously. And so, but anyway, when we talk about space weather and the auroras, we get massive viewership. But we don't just do that because we think we'll get massive viewership. We're all genuinely interested.
Yeah.
Shane's here and he's talking about it. And then I've interviewed Ben Davidson before. And so, again, telling Jeremy, I was like, you can do things like that and try and figure out, you have an audience, they're asking for commentary. Are you providing the commentary they're asking for? Or you do what Candace does and show old tax messages going back 2018. You can make vague insinuations they can't sue you over, and then be vague enough to where people think there's a grand conspiracy and do a true crime drama where you accuse the French First Lady of having a dong. And you will get millions of views and you will make lots of money, for which now I think it's, I don't know, a Fortune is saying that she makes around 10 million a year. And I'd estimate more than that.
Made a lot more than that this year. She's going to make a lot more than that this year. Okay, let's get back to the article, shall we? Last Wednesday, Candace Owens announced that she had received a cease and desist letter from Turning Point USA, now led by his widow, Erica Kirk. She made the announcement on Candace in an episode titled, "In My Lawsuit Error, Our First Cease and Desist of 2026. With a gleam in her eyes, she settled into the presentation. The legal threat was framed as just another development in the titillating script of her own heroism, a continuation of a plot that first premiered in the spring when she was sued for defamation by the President and First Lady of France. That lawsuit stemmed from her popular crusade claiming to have uncovered proof that the First Lady's genitals were not what the public assumed, evidence of a biological male who stole an identity, lived a lie, groomed a child, and married a political dignitary, and operated under the guise of a CIA operative, among other allegations woven into a narrative she drained dry on a new, independent platform after severing ties with her former boss, Ben Shapiro. I feel like I should receive an honorary law degree, she said, noting how much she has learned since she started getting sued. I've definitely learned that there is nothing quite like your first high, right? Who talks about defamation suits like this? For the love of gosh. That's crazy. That first legal letter that you get for me after being sued by the sitting president of a foreign country whose husband would like to strangle me with his large bare hands. This is so weird. Any other letter thereafter, it just doesn't do it. It's just not the same experience. Wow, this is so sick, you guys. Her goofy tone belied the seriousness of the subject that prompted the arrival of this latest legal document. It was tied to her ongoing investigation into Charlie Kirk's murder, a project launched before his burial and now playing out on weekday afternoons like a grim soap opera. The parties overtly or subtly implicated by her probe include, but are not limited to, the governments of Israel, Egypt, France, and the United States, various Jewish individuals, Turning Point USA, and Erica. On video calls on December 4th, 2025 and December 15th, 2024, I requested a retraction of Miss Owens Farmer's disparaging statements and again provided notice that the injuries caused by her statements are substantial and continuing to accrue. Miss Owens Farmer has declined to issue a retraction. To the contrary, she has stated that she doesn't feel any different about the people that she mentioned on the show and that she thinks are shady at Turning Point USA. As a consequence, her statements are continuing to cause harm to Turning Point USA. We are currently working to calculate the full extent to date of the still accruing damages. In my December 2nd letter, I highlighted Mrs. Owens' ongoing contractual obligation to not make any disparaging, false, misleading, and otherwise defamatory comments about Turning Point USA and or its employees, agents, directors, officers, affiliates, programs, or services. Mrs. Owens Farmer freely undertook this obligation in exchange for payment by support from and access to Turning Point USA. Her obligation remains in effect for 12 months following the term of her agreements, which were terminated on December 2nd, 2025. Since that letter, Turning Point's executives have repeatedly made themselves available via phone, text, and in-person meetings to provide information and documentation. Okay, and it cuts off there, but look at this. I never noticed this before. Since that letter, tpusa's executives have repeatedly made themselves available via phone, text, and in-person meetings to provide information and documentation. Okay, so like now I'm starting to think about that differently. So I wonder, oh my gosh. Remember when we were all like, why are they talking to her? They should never talk to her. This is just making it worse. Well, if they gave her credible information to dispute her lies and she continued on, and they have that like in text messages or calls or writing or emails or something, that's not going to look good in court. This Turning Point USA, a cease and desist. Is this what we're doing? Is this the chapter we're on now? We're turning the chapter here to lawfare? This is what's left? The loaded term she used, lawfare, refers to concerted misuse or misuse of the law against political or governmental opponents. You want us to believe that this is Charlie's legacy? She asked. Gosh, that makes me so mad. Shut up. So you can just trash his legacy, trash his organization, trash his wife and family and friends, and which is against the law, by the way. You're not supposed to slander people and make lies about them and do torturous interference with their business. That's actually against the law. And so that's all allowed. But if they ask you to stop doing that, that's completely, destroying Charlie's legacy. Oh my gosh. What she added next was more telling, at least to those of us onto an underlying motive. In the future, she said, Turning Point USA is going to be thought of as a girl that peaked in high school. The dig was subtle enough, but layered and personal. Turning Point was in its prime when she, not Erica Kirk, was the woman at the top. Turning Point USA is going to be known as the girl that peaked in high school. Candace Owens. Very, very interesting. Okay, you guys, I think that we will end it there for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Episode 10. Episodes drop on Friday. Please remember to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this channel. I would really appreciate that. And please leave a comment down below. I like to read all of them, except for ones that talk about Israel and the Jews. But other than that, I read all of them and enjoy them. I love seeing all of you guys in there talking, and it brings joy to my day. And if you would like to leave me a super thanks, you can do that as well. It may or may not be in the 3 little dots in the bar next to my logo. It's there somewhere. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate you guys so much. And I will see you next time on The Eclectic Journalist.